My mom thought marrying the father of my bully would magically create a blended family. Instead, it gave me 11 miserable years under the same roof as the kid who made my life hell. She figured she was gaining another son. In the end, she lost both of us, because I cut contact and he can't stand her either. Hey Reddit. Growing up, my life at home was nothing like the cheerful family portrait my mom tried to show the world. Her new husband's kid turned every single day into a grind. And no matter what happened, I was the one told to rise above it. Years passed, things only got worse, and eventually I walked away for good. Now my mom's reaching out again, but I doubt she's ready for what I'd have to say. When I was about 10, nearly 11, my mom, she's 45 now, sat me down at the kitchen table with this big rehearsed smile. The type she puts on when she's about to pitch something I'd never agree to. She told me she'd been dating someone, things were serious, and his name was Mark, 48. He had a 7-year-old son, Carl, now 23. I'd met Mark once before, seemed fine, gave me the whole champ handshake routine adults think kids actually like. I didn't dislike him until Mom dropped the news, we were moving in with him. She made it sound like a fairy tale. You'll have a little brother, she said, and you can set a good example for him. I just sat there thinking, I never asked for a brother. And I sure as hell didn't ask to live in some stranger's house. Out loud, I only asked if I really had to. Her smile slipped. Families stick together. This is good for us, she insisted. The first meeting with Carl? Pretty unforgettable. Mom brought me over for dinner. Carl stood in the doorway like I'd come to rob him. No hello, no smile, just a glare. His dad nudged him, say hi, and Carl barely muttered it, like spitting out something gross. Dinner itself was tense. Anytime I tried to speak, Carl interrupted or made noises to throw me off. When I asked what grade he was in, he shot back, why do you care? Mark scolded him half-heartedly, but Carl didn't even blink. Later, while Mom and Mark gushed in the kitchen about how great everything was, Carl stared at me and said flat out, this is my house. My room's bigger. Don't touch my stuff. That was my introduction. When we actually moved in a few months later, my room turned out to be the smallest in the house, basically a dressed-up storage closet. Carl's, meanwhile, was a kid's dream, posters, toys, his own TV. That first week, he made sure to remind me I didn't belong. Walking by my room just to toss out, you're not part of this family. Always disappearing before adults could hear. At first, Mark seemed like he might keep him in line. If Carl got caught, Mark would tell him to knock it off. But then I overheard things, like Mark quietly telling Carl, don't let him push you around. Stand your ground. The look Carl shot me after that said it all, he'd just been handed permission. One afternoon, Carl spilled juice all over my math homework. I grabbed his wrist before he could bolt, and he started screaming like I'd broken his arm. Mom came running, saw him fake crying, and immediately turned on me. What is wrong with you? He's younger, you're supposed to be the bigger person. I tried to explain, but she cut me off with the lowest blow, you're just like your father. Don't ruin this for me. Carl grinned behind her back. That was the moment I realized, there was no winning. After that, I stopped telling her when Carl messed with me. She'd excuse it or twist it into my fault. Mark, meanwhile, played both sides, sometimes scolding Carl, other times brushing it off with, you two need to get along. Spoiler, it was never mutual. That whole school year felt like walking through glass. Carl wanted me gone, and Mom made it clear she wasn't going to upset the new family for my sake. I'd lie awake at night hearing her laugh downstairs with Mark, and it hit me, I was just an extra piece of furniture in this happy little setup. Carl was only 7 then, and already a nightmare. I didn't have to imagine how the coming years would go. He showed me. The sabotage began just 2 months after we moved in. I had a science project due, one of those big poster boards with neat diagrams. I left it on my desk before dinner. Came back, and there was a thick smear of chocolate pudding right across the middle. Carl was sitting on his bed across the hall, licking a spoon with this smug grin. No need to ask who did it. I tried fixing it, but the project was trashed. My teacher gave me that look the next day, like I hadn't bothered. And that was just the beginning. He'd delete my files off the family computer, rename my assignments to nonsense so I couldn't find them, bend my trading cards, snap the tips of my pencils, toss my books so the pages bent. I had model cars I'd been building with my grandpa. Carl smashed one on the kitchen floor and kicked the pieces under the fridge. Mom's reaction? A sigh. You can rebuild it. It's not the end of the world. You just need to learn how to get along with him. Translation: don't upset Carl. And he didn't stop at home. He spread a rumor at school that I'd cheated on a math test. I wasn't even in the same class, but it spread fast. Kids whispered. Even teachers looked at me differently until the principal shut it down. Meanwhile, the physical stuff escalated. Doors slammed on my hands, on my feet. Once, he whipped a bathroom door into my shoulder so hard I had a bruise for a week. He'd throw little things at me, erasers, toy cars, anything he could grab, just to get a rise out of me. If I ignored it, he'd push harder until I couldn't anymore. And Mark? He'd scold Carl just enough to look like he was handling it, but never in a way that actually stopped him. I overheard him more than once whispering, "Don't let him boss you around," which basically translated to, "Keep it up, just don't make it obvious." After a while, I started spending hours at the library so I could finish homework without Carl accidentally wrecking it. Some nights I'd take my stuff to my buddy Jake's house instead. Mom thought I was just being social and was thrilled about it. I never told her the real reason. Things only spiraled from there. One afternoon, I left my backpack in the hallway to grab a drink. Came back, and it was gone. I found it outside, wide open, my books and papers scattered across the grass. Carl was across the street, pedaling his bike in circles, grinning like he'd just pulled off a masterpiece. Mom's reaction? Well, you shouldn't leave your things lying around. That became the pattern. He'd pull something cruel, I'd either clean up the mess myself or tell Mom, and she'd side with him, or worse, brush me off. I eventually stopped expecting her to do anything else. The scariest part was realizing this wasn't some childish phase. He wasn't outgrowing it. He was doubling down, and every adult who excused him was basically handing him another weapon to use on me. By the end of our first year living together, I'd already mapped out hiding spots for my stuff, figured out the safe windows to use the family computer, and learned which corners of the house gave me a line of sight so I could see him coming. I was barely 11, but it felt like my life had turned into a survival drill. And Carl? He was only just getting warmed up. When Christmas rolled around that year, I set my expectations so low they were underground. I figured the worst I'd deal with was Carl being snide or accidentally spilling cocoa on me. I wasn't ready for what he actually did. Mom and Mark had planned this big holiday get-together. Both sides of the family, the whole house packed. On Christmas morning, we opened gifts. I actually got a few good ones, new drawing pencils from my grandparents, a model kit from my uncle, and a hoodie I'd been wanting for months. For about an hour, I let myself believe maybe Carl would give it a rest. Then I stepped out to use the bathroom. Came back, and all my presents were gone. At first, I thought maybe Mom moved them. But then I spotted it, the model kit smashed and shoved into the trash, the hoodie stuffed into the fireplace grate, and my pencils scattered across the kitchen floor with most of the tips snapped. Carl stood there with a couple of cousins, trying not to laugh. I froze. He just gave me this smug little shrug, like, "What are you gonna do about it?" I snapped. I started picking up the broken pencils and told him he was pathetic. That's it, just pathetic. Of course, he immediately went full drama mode, shouting like I'd attacked him. Mark rushed in, asked what happened, but before I could explain, Carl's fake tears were already rolling. Mom swooped in like a hero, glaring at me. "What did you do to him?" she demanded, already convinced I was guilty. "He destroyed my gifts." I held up the ruined pencils as proof. She just folded her arms and said, "You need to let these little things go. It's Christmas. No drama today." I tried to tell her it wasn't little to me, and that's when she hit me with the line that gutted me. "Not word for word, but close enough. You're starting to sound just like your father. Don't ruin this for me." Right there. In front of everyone. She said it again. My face burned, not from embarrassment, but from how obvious it was that her perfect family image mattered more than me. Mark didn't even defend me. He just rubbed the back of his neck and looked away. The rest of the day was torture. At Mark's parents' house, Carl whispered crap to his cousins, and by lunch I was sitting alone at the far end of the table. Kids who usually talked to me were giving me side eyes. When I asked why, one muttered, "Carl said you're mean." I caught him across the table, smiling like he'd pulled off the greatest prank of his life. Even the adults joined in. One of Mark's sisters handed me bread and said, "You could try being a little friendlier, you know. Carl says you keep to yourself." Like I was the problem for not enjoying being treated like garbage. When we got home, I went to my room and shut the door, only to find later that some of my old sketchbooks were missing. I eventually found them in a box near the garage. "Why are my sketchbooks out here?" I asked Mom. "I'm making space in your room," she said without looking up from her phone. "You don't use them anymore." I flipped one open to show her half-finished drawings. "I use these all the time." "Well, Carl needs space for his Legos." "You've got too much clutter anyway." That wasn't clutter. Those were pieces of my life, things from before Carl was even in the picture. And in that moment, it hit me. She wasn't just ignoring what he did. She was enabling him. After that, I started carrying my most important stuff in a backpack everywhere: sketchbooks, clothes, anything I didn't want reorganized or destroyed. Everything else? I just accepted it was fair game. By then, I wasn't even shocked anymore. Just drained. If I spoke up, I was causing drama. If I stayed quiet, they took it as approval. And if I ever stood up for myself, suddenly I was the villain. That Christmas was the breaking point. It wasn't that my feelings for them flipped overnight, I'd been on that path for a while. But that was the moment I knew for certain, there was no winning here. Mom wasn't going to have my back. Mark only cared about looking like a decent dad when it suited him. And Carl? He'd keep pushing, because nobody was ever going to stop him. They made it perfectly clear. This wasn't my family. I was just stuck living in their house. And high school? It didn't get better. If anything, Carl only got more creative with his cruelty. By 15, he was tall enough to square up to me, and he loved using his size as a weapon. I wasn't easily intimidated, but it was exhausting knowing I couldn't even walk down the hall without bracing for him to shoulder check me just for fun. The accident happened during one of Mark's forced family game nights. Carl had been grinning all evening, which meant only one thing: he was planning something. We were in the middle of one of those silly board games with a spinner. When my turn came, I reached for it, just as Carl accidentally nudged the table. The board slid, my hand jolted forward, and my finger slammed into the sharp corner of the leg. I actually heard the crack before the pain even hit, then a sharp, searing sting shot all the way up my arm. The spinner clattered to the floor as I clutched my hand. Carl barely blinked. "Maybe try watching where you put your hands," he said flatly, like I'd just been clumsy. Mark gave a small frown but didn't raise his voice. "Mom!" I shouted. She sighed, rolling her eyes. "It was an accident. Don't make this into something it isn't." "I think it's broken," I said, holding my hand up. "Then we'll get it checked tomorrow," she replied, as casually as if I'd told her the milk was expired. "You'll survive." The clinic proved me right: hairline fracture. I wore a splint for weeks. Carl never apologized. Instead, I overheard him bragging to a friend at school, claiming I'd been dumb enough to punch a table. A few months later, the sabotage escalated. I had an interview lined up at a small local bookstore, perfect for me, quiet, steady, close to school. That morning, my folder with my application and resume was sitting on the kitchen counter. I went to grab breakfast, came back, and it was gone. Carl lounged on the couch, scrolling his phone. I asked if he'd seen it. He shrugged, maybe you left it in your room. I tore my room apart. Nothing. With no choice, I rushed to the library to print backup copies, which made me late. The interview felt rushed and awkward. I could see the manager losing interest. A week later, I found the original folder stuffed under a box of Christmas decorations in the garage. That wasn't random. That was deliberate. I told Mom, hoping for at least a flicker of outrage. She didn't even look concerned. If you want a job, you'll figure it out. Stop blaming Carl every time something doesn't go your way. Same script as always. I was too sensitive, I held grudges, I needed to be the bigger person. She never once asked Carl if he'd done it, no matter how obvious it was. By that point, Carl wasn't just some annoying stepbrother, I saw him as a permanent obstacle. The only real solution was leaving. So I kept quiet, kept my head down, and focused on grades while stacking up whatever cash I could from odd jobs. I mowed lawns, walked dogs, fixed neighbors' computers, every dollar went into a little lockbox hidden in my backpack. I didn't dare leave it in my desk. Carl, of course, didn't stop. My silence just gave him more confidence. He'd mutter insults when we crossed in the hallway, unplug my laptop charger so assignments died halfway through, and once left the freezer door open, ruining a week's worth of groceries. Mom blamed me, because I'd used it earlier to make a smoothie. That was the breaking point. I realized it didn't matter if I was right. They didn't want the truth. They wanted quiet. By senior year, I had a simple plan: graduate, get into college, and leave. I didn't care if it meant living in a cramped dorm or a shoebox apartment, anything was better. My life became a routine: school, library, home. The less time around Carl, the fewer chances he had to mess with me. When the acceptance letter came, I kept it to myself for 2 weeks, just savoring the fact I finally had an exit ticket. Once housing was confirmed, I slowly packed my important stuff and stored it at Jake's place. By summer, I was practically living out of a duffel bag. Not quite free, but close. And then, I was gone. Dorm life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. No Carl sneaking into my room, no broken things, no missing sketchbooks. I didn't go back for holidays, skipped birthdays, ignored every family dinner invite. For years, I stayed out of reach. Then Carl found me. It started with a Facebook message request: "Hey, long time. Need to talk." I deleted it. 2 days later, he was outside my building, leaning against a beat-up sedan, looking way older than someone barely 22 should. Same smug grin, though. "Been a while," he said. "What do you want?" I asked. "Just catching up, and, I need a place to crash. Got laid off. Apartment stuff's complicated." "No," I said instantly. "That's it?" "Just no. That's it." I walked inside. He didn't quit. For a week, texts came from random numbers, some casual, some guilt trips: "We're family, man. Mom would want you to help. It's only temporary." I blocked them all. Then silence. I thought he'd given up. 2 months later, the police called. They wanted me to come down to answer questions about a theft investigation. I was stunned. I'd never even had a parking ticket. At the station, they showed me a report. Someone had opened a store credit account under my name and maxed it out on electronics. The video footage was blurry, but the guy looked about Carl's size, same build, and driving that same beat-up sedan. When the officer asked if I knew him, I said yes. Stepbrother. They already suspected as much. He'd used my license number, which he must have stolen years back while going through my stuff. The car in the footage had been impounded 2 weeks earlier, in his name. Even with that evidence, it took me hours to clear myself. I had to dig up old emails, bank statements, location history, proof I wasn't involved. It was like reliving the same cycle all over again, Carl wreaking havoc, me scrambling to clean up. Eventually, the officers told me I was clear, for now. They might reach out again, they said. Walking out of that station, I felt this weight pressing in my chest. Not fear. Clarity. I knew exactly what had gone down. Carl had shown up hoping I'd bail him out. I refused, so he tried to drag me under with him. That night, I called Mom. She picked up on the second ring. "You couldn't just help him, could you?" she said before I even opened my mouth. "He tried to set me up for theft," I answered, voice flat. "The cops have footage. His car's already impounded." Carl would never. Carl absolutely would. He's been pulling this crap since I was a kid. Only now? It's not pranks. It's criminal. "You're exaggerating," she snapped. "Even if he slipped up, you should be the bigger person. He's family." "I'm done being the bigger person," I told her. "I'm done, period. You can't just erase people forever. Watch me." And I hung up. A few days later, my uncle called. Mom had been venting to him. "She says you're blowing this out of proportion," he said. "Maybe give Carl a chance, talk it out." "Not happening," I replied. "Tell her she can chat with him after he makes bail." Carl never tried reaching me again. But the damage was already carved in. Not because of him, that was predictable. It was Mom. Her first reaction wasn't concern, wasn't even asking if I was okay. No, her priority was shielding her golden boy. That was the final straw. I didn't announce it, didn't make a scene. I just disappeared. Changed my number, redirected my mail to a P.O. box, told work to lock down my info, even gave security instructions to block anyone who came sniffing around. To them, I simply stopped existing. The last I heard of Carl came secondhand, from a coworker whose buddy worked at the same tow yard. Apparently, Carl had been caught shoplifting at a hardware store, spent a couple weeks in county, got probation. I didn't smile when I heard it, but I sure didn't feel bad. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about sealing the door shut, permanently. Months of silence passed. Then one Saturday, my grandparents called. Harmless enough, asked if I could help move boxes in their garage. No drama, no schemes. At least that's what I believed. I showed up around noon, grabbed a dolly, started stacking bins. 20 minutes in, I heard tires crunch over gravel. A white SUV rolled up. My stomach clenched as Mom stepped out. And from the passenger side, Carl, sunglasses on, hands stuffed in his pockets like he was arriving at some grand event. "Well, look who's here," Mom chirped, like she'd just bumped into an old neighbor. "Didn't realize this was a reunion," I muttered, keeping my focus on the boxes. "Don't be so dramatic. We were just in the neighborhood." "Right," I said under my breath. Carl leaned against the garage door, smirking. "Still holding grudges, huh?" I ignored him. "Guess some people never grow up," he added, louder this time. Then, "Oh, and about that whole crime thing? Total misunderstanding. You seriously overreacted." That stopped me cold. I set the bin down, turned. "Misunderstanding? You stole using my name. My ID." "Allegedly," he shrugged. Grandma came out, drying her hands on a towel. "What's going on out here?" "Nothing," Mom said quickly. "Just catching up." Not nothing, I cut in, raising my voice so she couldn't smooth it over. Your son tried to frame me. And you defended him, like you always have. Mom's jaw tightened. This isn't the time. No. This is exactly the time. I pointed straight at Carl. Broken Christmas presents, ruined projects, fake rumors at school, that was him. My bookstore job interview? He hid my folder in the garage. Game night when my finger broke? Not an accident. And when that wasn't enough, he tried to make me look like a criminal. Carl gave a low laugh. Man, you keep a list? I keep proof. I pulled a folder from my backpack. Wasn't even for this, but it fit too well. I flipped it open, printed screenshots from the police report, the impound slip with his name, stills from the store camera showing his car. I held it up. Recognize this? That's your car. That's your name. And this is the only reason I'm not in a holding cell right now. Grandpa stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Grandma's face hardened as she looked at Carl. Is this true? She asked. His smirk flickered, then came back. That's not the full story. It's the only story that matters, I cut in. Mom stormed forward, grabbed my arm. You're humiliating me in front of my parents. No. I'm making sure everyone finally sees what you've been hiding for over a decade. You sound just like your father, she snapped. Always looking for a fight, always playing the victim. And you sound exactly like you always have, choosing your image over your own kid. The air went razor sharp. Grandpa stared between us, silent. Then Carl chuckled low. Man, you really haven't changed. Neither have you, I told him. Which is why this is over. No calls. No visits. And if I see you anywhere near me? I walk the other way. You're done. Mom's face flushed red. You can't just cut us out. Watch me. I grabbed my keys, walked past them, and didn't look back. Grandma called after me, but I kept moving. I could feel Mom's stare burning into me, and Carl's smug little grin stayed in the corner of my vision. I didn't bother turning around. Sliding into my car, I heard her voice crack into that sharp pitch she always hit when things slipped out of her control. You're tearing this family apart. From the driver's seat I answered flatly, it was broken long before me. I'm just refusing to live inside the wreckage. Then the door shut, and I pulled away. That night, a message lit up my phone, my uncle. Heard you and Mom went head-to-head at Grandma's. Carl blew up at her afterward, right in the car. Guess getting humiliated in front of the grandparents finally cracked his ego. Maybe he figured out she couldn't shield him anymore. Said he's cutting her off, too. I didn't reply. No point. 2 days later, Grandma called. I told your grandfather everything. He wants a dinner, just you and your mom. Carl's not invited. I'm finished with her, I said. This is different, Grandma pressed. Your grandfather insists. Says it matters. I didn't like it, but I respected him enough to show up. He was never one to drag me into drama unless there was a reason. The dinner was at their house, just the three of us. The tension was thick the second I stepped inside. Mom sat at the table, trying to play calm, though her nerves were written all over her. Grandpa, at the head, leaning on his cane, eyes sharp. Before we eat, he said, I need to ask you something. Everything your grandmother told me, the smashed belongings, the broken finger, the sabotage job, the framing, was all of that real? Mom gave a short laugh. Dad, you can't take all that seriously. He's always exaggerated. Answer the question, Grandpa cut in. His voice was steady, quiet, but heavy enough to make the room still. She flicked a glance at me, then back to him. Some of it's blown out of proportion. He's always misunderstood Carl's. Stop. Grandpa didn't raise his voice, but the air shifted. I've been a father long enough to know the line between a kid making mistakes and a mother enabling cruelty. You didn't protect him. You told him to swallow it, to be the bigger person, while letting that boy tear him down for years. And now as grown men, Carl tries a crime in his name, and you still defend him. Unacceptable. Mom's jaw clenched. It's more complicated. No. It's simple. He leaned forward. You failed as a mother. She sank back in her chair, lips pressed tight. I've made my decision, Grandpa went on. You're out of my will. Your share goes to him. He gestured at me. You've shown you can't be trusted with family. He has. Despite all of it, he's worked hard, built a life, stayed steady without your help. That's the person I want carrying forward what we've built. Silence swallowed the room. Mom's face drained. You can't mean that. I mean every word. I won't reward selfishness and abuse. She turned toward me like I'd object. I didn't. I just looked back. Grandpa pushed his chair back, stood. Dinner's in the kitchen. Eat or don't. This talk is finished. I didn't touch the food. Just thanked him for his honesty and walked out. She could sit with the truth on her own. That night I cut her off completely. No more debates, no more second chances. She could twist Grandpa's words, cry about the will, spin the story however she liked. I wasn't biting. Calls started coming in, unknown numbers. Sometimes silence hung on the line before someone spoke, which told me it was her listening, deciding whether to talk or hang up. Then the backdoor attempts came, messages through my uncle, through cousins, even one of Mark's sisters. She just wants to talk. She says she's sorry. She's changed. But I knew her. She hadn't changed a thing since the day we moved into that house. The only reason she was trying now was because Carl had finally cut her loose too. Grandma had already told me he barely speaks to her since that fight in the car. Without him, without me, without Mark's family running interference, she had no one left to play along with her illusions. Grandma mentioned she mostly stays home these days. No invitations, fewer friends. Mark buries himself in work, avoids confrontation, pretends neutrality will make everything disappear. Carl keeps his distance. Even her own parents aren't on her side anymore. The woman who once paraded her perfect family is now stuck in a half-empty house, surrounded only by the fallout she swore would never touch her. Whenever someone tried to mediate, I shut it down the same way, I'm done. I didn't hate her. Hate takes energy. I just refused to give her space to offer half apologies, shift the blame, and rewrite the past. I wasn't about to invite her into my future so she could poison that, too. She could call. She could beg. She could write letters. None of it would matter. Grandpa's words that night stayed with me. I won't reward selfishness and abuse. For the first time, someone had said it to her face, stripped of excuses. I didn't need to add anything. Silence did the rest. Now she's alone. Not because of fate. Not because of bad luck. But because she built a life where her image mattered more than her child, and when that image cracked, so did everyone holding it up. I don't plan to see her again. Not at birthdays, not in hospitals, not at funerals. Some doors, once shut, stay that way. Mine isn't just shut. It's locked for good.